So today, first we'll have the chanting in Thai language. The bhikshus of the Thai tradition will recite the sutra of auspiciousness.
Long life for His Holiness.
Tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa namo tassa
I kept many here, all gone. You should get.
Actually, there are 45,000 of those.
Samma sambuddhassa namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassaพุทธัง saraṇaṃ คัจฉามิธัมมัง saraṇaṃ คัจฉามิสังฆัง saraṇaṃ คัจฉามิทุติยัมปิพุทธัง saraṇaṃ คัจฉามิทุติยัมปิธัมมัง saraṇaṃ คัจฉามิทุติยัมปิสังฆัง saraṇaṃ คัจฉามิตติยัมปิพุทธัง saraṇaṃ คัจฉามิตติยัมปิธัมมัง saraṇaṃ คัจฉามิตติยัมปิสังฆัง saraṇaṃ คัจฉามิอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชชาจารณะสัมปันโนสุขโตโลกวิทูอนุตตโรปุริสธรรมสาลติสาธาเดวมนุสานังพุทโธภะคะวะติสวากขาโตภะคะวะตาธัมโมสันติติโกอาการิโกเอหิปัสสิโกโอปะนะยิโกปัจจาตังเวดิตัมโพวินโยหิติสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆอุจุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆญาญาปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสามีจิปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆญาติดันจัตตาลิปุริสยุคานิอาตปุริสปุญกลาเอสะภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆอาหุนายโยปาหุนายโยดากินายโยอัญญริกรณีโยอนุตตรังปุญญาเกตังโลกาสัตติหันธรรมยังสารพันเยนะพุทธมังคลคาทาโยปันนามะเสนิสิโนเทวามาจิเมโกตัญโยปุปภาเกจาอาคา เนอารติเยอุปาริจาปัญจิเมปิจานันโนบายาเบตาขาวามปติโมคัลลาโนจะอุตาเลอิสาเนปิจาราหุโรอิเมโคมังกาลาบุตตาสัพเพอิทาปฏิติตาวันดิตาเตจัมเหหิสักการะจะปุจิตาเอเตสังฆานุภาเวนะสัมมาโสทิภวันตุโนอิเจวะมันจันตานามาสนัยยังนามาสมาโนรัตนาตายังยังปุญญาปิสันดังวิปุราราทังตัสสะนุภาเวนะหะตันตรายโยชยันตัวโพธิยามัวเลสักยานังนันเดวาตโนเอวังตวังวิชัยโยโหหิชยันสุชัยมังกะเลอปราจิตาปันลังเกสีเสปดาวิปุกะเลอภิเสเกสาปปุตานังอาคัมปัตโตปโมดติสุนาคันตังสุมังคารังสุปาปาตังสุโหติตังสุขโนสุมโหตัวจัสุเยดังพระมจาลิสุปดาคินังกายกรรมังวาจากรรมังปดาคินังปดาคินังมโนกรรมังปเนติเตปดาคินาปดาคินานิกัตวานรพันตเตปดาคิเนภวตุสัพพมังคลังลากันตุสัพพเทวตาสัพพพุทธานุภาเวนัสสดาโสติภวันตุเตภวตุสัพพมังคลังลากันตุสัพพเทวตาสัพพธรรมานุภาเวนัสสดาโสติภวันตุเตภวตุสัพพมังคลังลากันตุสัพพเทวตาสัพพสังฆานุภาเวนัสสดาโสติภวันตุเต
strive to His holiness.
Thank you. Thank you.
After this, we have chanting in Japanese language, the Prajaparamita Sutra or the Heart Sutra being chanted. In Japanese language, it's known as Sangi Shinsho. Thus I have heard, at one time, the Blessed One was sitting on a vulture's peak in the city of Rajgir. He was accompanied by a large community of monks as well as a large community of bodhisattvas. On that occasion, the Blessed One was absorbed in a particular concentration called the profound appearance. Meanwhile, the bodhisattva, the great being, the noble Avalokiteshvara, was contemplating the profound discipline of the perfection of wisdom. He came to see that the five aggregates were empty of any inherent nature of their own. Through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra approached the noble Avalokiteshvara and asked him, how should a son of the noble lineage proceed when he wants to train in the profound discipline of the perfection of wisdom? The noble Avalokiteshvara replied to the Venerable Shariputra, whatever son or daughter of the noble lineage wants to train in the profound discipline of the perfection of wisdom should consider things in the following ways. First, he or she should clearly and thoroughly comprehend that the five aggregates are also empty of their own inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form, and form is not other than emptiness. Similarly, feeling, discernment, compositional factors, and consciousness are also empty. Likewise, Shariputra, all phenomena empty. They have no defining characteristics. They are unproduced, they do not cease, they are undefiled, yet they are not separate from defilement. They do not decrease, yet they do not increase. This being the case, Shariputra, in terms of emptiness, there exists no form, no feelings, no discernment, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongues, no bodies, no minds, no visual form, no sound, no smells, no taste, no tactile sensations, no mental objects. There exist no visual elements, no mental element, until there exist no elements of mental consciousness. There exists no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance, no aging and death and no exhaustion of aging and death. In the same way, there exists no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no lack of attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since bodhisattvas have no attainment, they depend upon and dwell in the perfection of wisdom. Their minds are unobstructed and unafraid. They transcend all error and finally reach the end point, Nirvana. All the Buddhas of the past, present, and futures have depended, do and will depend upon the perfection of wisdom. Thereby, they are becoming, and will become unsurpassably, perfectly, and completely awakened Buddhas. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom is a mantra of great knowledge. It is an unsurpassable mantra. It is a mantra that is comparable to the incompatible, compatible to the incompatible. It is a mantra that totally pacifies all suffering. It will not deceive you, and therefore know it to be true. I proclaim the mantra of the perfection of wisdom. In this way, the great bodhisattva trained themselves in the profound perfection of wisdom. At that moment, the Blessed One arose from his concentration and said to the noble Avalokiteshvara, "Well said, well said. This is just how it is, my son, just how it is. The profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced exactly as you have been explained. Then the ones gone thus will be truly delighted." When the Buddha and when the Blessed One had spoken these words, the venerable Shariputra and all the Bodhisattvas, the great being, the Bodhisattva, the great being, the noble Avalokiteshvara, and the entire gatherings of gods, humans and asuras, and the Gandharvas were overjoyed, and they praised what the Blessed One has said. After that, Koreans will recite the Heart Sutra same. So I'm not going to read the Heart Sutra again. Just contemplate on emptiness as the Koreans recite Heart Sutra in their own language.
아제 바라 승아제 모지사바
page number where we left yesterday is 21, and the second part or the second paragraph. That's where we were yesterday. And in another book, in the one where we only have the English, it's page 11. And then in the text, if you see the subheadings and bold letter, so these are actually not integral part of the text. As I have compared the text in Tibetan, these are actually added later. Looks like so those outlines or subtitles or the titles that you have in bold are not integral part of the text. Please mind this in your please keep this in your mind. And now we are at page 11 in the blue book and page 21 in the page 21 in the green book. And I'm actually following the green book right now. I prostrate to the mother of Buddhas and of all of the heroes and bodhisattvas, who through the knowledge of all leads heroes seeking pacification to complete peace, who through knowledge of paths causes those helping migrators to achieve the aims of the world, and through the possession of which the subduers set forth the varieties having all aspects. I prostrate to the perfect Buddha, the best of teachers, who taught that whatever is dependently arising is unceasing, unborn, not annihilated, impermanent, not coming, not going, without distinction, without identity, free from conceptual construction. So recite the refuge first to Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. I take refuge in you until enlightened mind. By the power of accumulations like generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. To Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, I take refuge in you until enlightenment. By the power of accumulations like generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. To Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, I take refuge in you until enlightenment. By the power of accumulations like generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Proclamation on the part of Lama, inviting all celestials, non-human spirits, and deities to listen to the teaching, and granting them permission to abide in their own state, and so that they can also listen to the teaching. I'll speak in the languages of gods, demigods, spirits, and all kinds of languages, and may all benefit from this. Who out of his utmost compassion for all sentient beings, taught the Tibetan origination as his lineage, I prostrate to the great Buddha. This is found in the Fundamental of Wisdom by Nagarjuna, a supplication to Buddha Shakyamuni as His Holiness ended with. Today, I would like to share with you this, that basically there are different religious traditions in this world. So, grossly speaking, there are different kinds of religious tradition, and all of them commonly whether or not they are based on depth deep philosophy, they still have the name of religion. So from this common name, religion means something that gives hope to the mind. When we have problems, try to solve them. And when you are deprived of any means, and when it's beyond your scope to tackle those problems, then through prayers and through devotions, we try to solve this. And so this is universal to all religious traditions. So therefore, religion is something that can give hope to many. So those who have no religious traditions, when they have a lot of problem, and then if they are bereft and means, then they commit suicides. So that gives some hope in our mind. So major religious traditions try to do that. So maybe around 4,000 or 5,000 years might have elapsed since in this world people begin praying to some gods or celestial beings. A view developed with civilizations. In that respect, it seemed to have started with the Egyptian civilization in the past. Then Iraq and Iran also had one of the earliest civilizations. And gradually in Central Asia, in Aryan regions and so forth. And in India, also a philosophical tradition evolved. And then later in China, philosophical tradition also emerged. So basically these are the major kinds of evolutions with passage of civilization with regards to philosophical view. I'm not really sure, but in Egyptian civilization, as I have heard it, they also seem to speak of a high kind of being. They also seem to speak something of past life and future life. And recently, I have come across an old writing by an Iran somebody from the Iranian region. They also seem to describe of a god in the state of an invisible sphere or space. So that was like 4,000 or 5,000 years back. So in this manner, for these thousands of years, religious traditions have really been like a backbone where people kept their hopes in. Then, some 2,300 or some years back, some 300 years or 400 years back, then people started using their own human intelligence and then applied their knowledge to the substances that we have. So in the past 200 years and so forth, with the development of technology and science, when we progressed quite fast, for thousands of years, that tradition of relying on some kind of celestial being or higher being, most of them, even though they pray a lot, seems that their prayers not actually actualized or fulfilled through prayer only, but through technological development, people felt that it's obvious that it brings benefit, like in the case of health. mere just praying will help you by when you have sickness, but through medicine, through other measures related to technological developments, all these fruitful results seem to have answered many of people's problems. So instead of that aspirational prayer or wishful prayer, people naturally felt that since their own wishes are being solved through technologies, or they then in the late 19th or in the beginning of, in the late 19th century and beginning of 20th century, people were fascinated by modern science. But in the past, people were not really scientifically inclined. But then in the 19th century and in the beginning of 20th century, people really paid a lot of attention to material developments. But in the later century of the 20th century, later part of the 20th century, people felt that external development of material facilities was not sufficient. And when it comes to mental happiness, these also still could not be a sufficient source of mental happiness, since mental dissatisfaction, mental disturbances, all are there, even when you have all these material facilities. Even when among the human sicknesses, those relating to mental difficulties, physical health, because of their mental sickness or mental anxieties or mental agitations, they seem also to inflict their health, or they seem to harm their well-being physically. So this is actually quite obvious. I have known some billionaires or really rich, and they are actually well educated. They all have the modern education and they have fame, but still deep inside them there is resentment, unhappiness, and it's quite obvious in them. So it says that mere material development is not sufficient to bring happiness. Still, on the adverse side, when we are rich, when you're highly materially developed, your suspicion, your anticipation, or your greed or lust may increase. Because of that, there is jealousy, hatred, competition. And as you have strong competition, then there will be strong suspicion arising from that. Complete loss of faith in other. While on the other side, when your family is not really rich, but quite manageable on your own, you are quite cordial with your friends. But as you become richer, then you seem to look down upon your neighbors, and also you seem to be cheating on your neighbors. So this says that mere material facilities or development there is not sufficient to bring happiness. Scientifically speaking, especially in the science of health, human health, they speak of the importance of the mental peace for mental happiness, for physical happiness. And when your mind is really disturbed, when it is really strong resentment and grudge within you, hatred, they say that our physical immune system will decline. Whereas your mind is calmed, and when you're really relaxed and happy, your own mental or physical immune system will increase. And sometimes they are actually intensified. So therefore, this being the case, even in medical science, they speak of the importance of mental happiness that is highly associated with physical health. And this kind of mental health cannot created by taking injection or to some kind of pills or tranquilizers, but maybe they could relieve your pains temporarily. But these are like painkillers, very temporary. So therefore, mental happiness, mental peace can only be attained by training or by subjecting your mind to training or transformation. There isn't any kind of happiness or peace aside from the mental state itself, or that can be attained outside the mental domain. So whatever the distorted disturbances are there, if you could if you could dispel them or decrease them, naturally there will be happiness or mental peace. So whatever disturbs the mental peace, those mental defilements like distorted information, distorted thoughts, misperception, misconceptions, if you could reduce them by knowing their reality, and in order to receive these distorted disturbances, mental disturbances, you have to find the actual antidote of these. It is not sufficient to pray that may they be eliminated. This will not relieve you of the mental disturbances. Since this being an entity in itself, we have to find the actual opposite of that mental disturbance. For example, when it is really hot, then we have to solve the problem by trying to cool the area by bringing in bringing ice or bringing a fan or air cooler or so forth, and this will really decrease the heat inside. And so this, because these heats and are called and incompatible with each other, and because of that, as they are incompatible, when one side arises, the other side naturally drops down, and this is actually the law of nature. In the same way, we are in the case of our mental domain. If there are mental disturbances within it, the method, the way to reduce it is to find its opposite, the incompatible one, which is opposite of this. And then through that, even though mind is not physical and has the quality of cognition and luminosity, it doesn't have any form. Therefore, in order to, because of that, it has no form. When we say a mind, when we say mental disturbances, the state of mind where there is distraction, where there is a lot of disturbances inside, and then when there is a disturbance from outside, you feel may something negative happen to the one who disturbs you. So you have kind of a wrathful kind of mental attitude. So opposite of that is just taking the same subject, but changing the attitude by wishing the other person to be happy. These two minds contradict each other because they are based on the same object, but the attitude, like may he be happy and may he be unhappy. These two kinds of minds, they are incompatible with each other because their objects are incompatible. So, like hatred, anger, jealousy, all these, if these really bring mental dissatisfaction, mental instability, then instead of them, we have to cultivate love, compassion, and trust in others. Trust, love, compassion, affection, and patience with regards to one's negative attitudes towards you. If you have all these good qualities, then the opposite factors of these, like the anger, hatred, or lust, or strong desire, these will naturally come down or will reduce. So because of that, real happiness is what we mental happiness. Physical comfort is not primary, is not the most important one. The important one is the state of mind. We all have our experiences. For example, when you are physically uncomfortable, but still mentally relaxed, the physical discomfort is not really that obvious. Whereas if there is mental discomfort, instability, even when you are physically so relaxed, you are not really happy. For example, when we have difficult or sicknesses or diseases, the doctors ask us to relax. Relaxation doesn't mean just lying on the bed. Even when you are trying to lie down on a comfortable bed with all the facilities, air condition or so forth, but within yourself, if you have a lot of disturbances within your mind, there is no real relaxation. So real relaxation means it should be taking place within the mind. So if your mental mind is not disturbed and if it's relaxed, then if there is real relaxation. For example, if physically, even when you are so tired, but mentally, if you are not agitated, and when you are relaxed, you don't feel that tired. For example, when we are sharing a moment with some people, and when you are mentally engaged in it and mentally relaxed, you can just carry on with it for hours. But when you share some moments with some person whom you don't really like, and when you have to talk with them, even few minutes is really unbearable for you, and you just wish so much within you that it finishes soon. So this is a state of mind. Therefore, mental peace is very important for one's own personal physical health. Mental peace is very important. In a family, mental peace is very important to have a conducive family, cooperative family. And when you have to study, when your mind is really relaxed, and within that state, if you study, you will be able to study properly. While on the other side, when your mind is really disturbed, when you're really angry, or when you have a strong desire or lust, even when you try to study, you are studying only at the surface, and study doesn't take in greater depth. For example, sometimes a very strict teacher might try to create some fear in his student in order to impose them to study. And under that circumstances, even when they study, they won't study that in that great detail or that. Whereas on the side, if the teacher teaches them with passion, with compassion, with love and generosity, then the students will learn in greater depth. But on the other side, out of fear, even when you study, the study won't be really deep. Therefore, mental stability or mental peace is really important. So nowadays, in different parts of the world, they now recognize the importance of mental peace and how distorted mental factors disturb the mind. Mental peace, sorry. Up until now, basically, majority of the scientists have been putting more efforts in the material world or the matters, and they have not really dwelt in their own emphasis with regards to their own mental state in the past. That was in the past. So when it comes to scientific analysis or contemplation or investigation or experiment, they need to take a matter and then not only a hypothesis of one person is sufficient, but they need to be verified and validated by second and third. Of course, they use inferential reasoning to some extent, but by focusing more on matters, it's very difficult to count on your, try to investigate on your own mental domain. So until now, the focus of the attention or investigation or experiment in the past, they want many. Nowadays, scientists are aware that the manifestation of internal mental state are seen in the brain level because of the changes in the brain, and also when such kind of mental such kind of mental distorted thought arises, some kind of change happen at the brain level in this area and that area. So to some extent, they can actually infer that this kind of change happened because that kind of mental state. So among the neuroscientists, they have, since they have like really sophisticated devices or mechanism to explore their brain neurons, they take a lot of interest in exploring more. To some extent, they can really explain a lot when it comes to the function of the brain and the brain neurons. They also speak of a division of the brain which is responsible for the speech. Not only that part of mind which is responsible for the speech, if something happens to that portion, they again says that another part of the brain will take the responsibility. So, of course, individually it seems that different parts of the brain seem to have their own functions, but also they seem to be interconnected, since when something has gone wrong in one part, the other part also take the responsibility of taking its function. So when they speak of the brain, it's more related with the sensorial mental faculty than the mental consciousness. So even in our Buddhist philosophy, it speaks of the pervasion of the ignorance in even in all parts, be it sensorial or non-sensorial mental factors. So. So if there, of course, there are different kinds of conceptual thoughts, but conceptual thought that arises without relying on the sensorial perceptions, if we could utilize that kind of conceptual thoughts, which doesn't rely on the sensorial perception, then that would really make a lot of difference. People, it seems that in other religious tradition, even though they might not use the term, a technical term, self-grasping, they know that strong grasping at itself creates a lot of disturbances, and because of that, in other religious tradition of in other theistic religious tradition, they completely submit themselves to the God, the Creator, so that strong, intensified form of craving or grasping at self will reduce. So from that perspective, in order to reduce self-grasping by submitting yourself to the God who created this whole life, you tend to reduce that self-thinking or self-grasping. And because you are actually creator and entirely, and then you submit yourself to that creator, and because of that, the intensity of the grasping of the self, or the importance that you attach to a self, seem to reduce. Somebody who has the fact that because of self-grasping we fall into the extreme, it's actually in some way accepted by all the major religious traditions. So from that perspective, we seem to have some kind of idea of selflessness, even in the Theistic religious traditions. For example, that there isn't an I which is independent of its own, but merely created by the creator. And they seem to have given an idea that there isn't any tangible I which is important and which is unique and which is distinct and which is on its own, but that it's created by something else, the creator. So, complete submission to God will reduce that intensity of self-grasping. For that reasoning, when it comes to submission yourself, then it seems to also reduce that intensity of the grasping. So, even in our Buddhist philosophy, when we take refuge in the higher beings, they also bring down our pride. Not pride, arrogance, sorry. And also, compassion also used in order to relieve one of the, in order to decrease one's arrogance. And then in like Christianity and other religious traditions, since we are created by the Creator, and because the Creator values love and compassion so much, in order to appease or please that Creator, we have to follow its instruction. So, and same seem to apply with this practice, because we revere Buddha so much. We naturally try to take its advice seriously. So, by giving importance and taking refuge in the Buddhas, we also seem to reduce that the kind of importance that we give to a self. Therefore, so this is a kind of a basic understanding. And if you think carefully, it seems quite true. I have known very genuine practitioners of Christianity in Islamism, or Islam, sorry. And there are really very nice people. I always try to give an example of Mother Teresa in Calcutta. If you look at her works and her followers, how much they practically struggle or practically work to support the bereft ones. They really work hard. And even in our Tibetan settlements, we can see, or in remote settlements, we can see the Christian missionaries, that this kind of genuine contribution by these missionaries are because of their own faith in Christianity or on God. When it comes to philosophical view, of course there are differences, but that is immaterial. Even within Buddhism, we have different philosophical views, and according to Prasankika, the highest one, the remaining part of the Buddhist philosophical views have actually fallen into the extremes to some extent. From that perspective, even though these Buddhist philosophical view holders have fallen in the extreme, we can still bring them within our own community that they still behold the Buddhas and Dharma and Sangha and practice loving compassion and bodhicitta. And because of that, we have some kind of intimacy with them. In the same way, we can develop the same kind of affinity towards all religious practitioners. So His Holiness is going through the prayer book that His Holiness has composed for solving the Tibetan problem. So he is referring us to look at the 15th page, the last at the end note, the note of composition note, where he this supplication to the 17 Pandits of Nalanta. That's what His Holiness can compose, and in the 15th page in the Tibetan text, we are right now there, and His Holiness is pointing. So beginning from the first verse or first line, 7th line, 8th line, 9th line. Look at the 9th. True. Cool. Those who are looking at the text, please raise your hands or with a text. Okay, there's At this time, when the whole world has witnessed tremendous advancement in the field of science and technology, but we are also greatly distracted by the hustle and bustle of our hectic lives, it is crucially important for all of us who follow the Buddha to develop faith based upon an understanding of the Buddha's Dharma teachings. This I always tell not only the Tibetans, but also the Chinese, the Japanese, Thailand, or Burma, or all the spiritual friends, Buddhist spiritual friends, that we should be 21st century Buddhist. What do you mean by 21st century Buddhist? Is that through the study of Buddha's teaching, through valid reasoning, understand the Buddha's teaching to such an extent that you could generate genuine conviction in the infallibility of Buddha's teachings. And somebody who has developed such kind of deep conviction and faith based on that conviction is what we call as a sound faith. Once I always tell this, I try to relate this story, and once I was in the Kuli Valley, we were crossing some kind of patches, and then some locals came to see me, and they brought some like cakes or breads, and we just chatted with them after greeting, and then we talked for some time, and then I asked them, you are all practitioners of Buddha Dharma, and because of that you are Buddhist, aren't you? And they said yes. So what is Buddhism? I asked them. I take refuge in Buddha, I take refuge in Dharma and Sangha. This is what Buddhism is all about, they said, and I agreed. And then what is Buddha? I asked, and that's it, they don't know. And then I asked him, is there any difference between Buddha and Brahma and Ishvara? And they said, same. So there, in there, you see the confusion. And once I was also at Lucknow, and there seemed to be some local students of students who are Buddhist, and they recited the Mangalcharam Buddha Dharma Sangha, and then the verse of our refuge. They were, and then, and I asked the students there, and they said they don't know. We all need to really analyze through some study. Otherwise, when we say Buddha and Dhamma and Sangha, we are only at the level of understanding of the understanding of mere words, and no more than that. You must have heard this story once in Tibet in the past. A Tibetan Lama was giving a teaching, and when the teaching was taking place, one of the disciples among them in the audience asked, "What is Buddha and where is he to whom we so venerate?" And then the Lama, even though he was one who was giving a teaching on a throne, by sitting on a throne, and then the answer did not come to him immediately, and after some time, then by pointing to the sky, in the sky, in the invisible crystal palace with a lot of radiance, the Buddha Shakyamuni is sitting there. So there again, there is a lot of confusion there. So it's very important for us to know what Buddha is all about, what Buddha means. When we speak of Buddha, if, as in the Himalayan tradition, if we restrict the Buddha, understanding of Buddha to that of a historical figure who came here on this earth some 2,500 years before, and there are some people who just stick to that notion that Buddha Shakyamuni was just an ordinary being. So if we were to stick to that kind of a perception, then that's not enough. Of course, this is not to make fun of you, but once I was approached by a scholar from a Korean university who said he was writing a biography of Buddha Shakyamuni, and then he said he was taking my example, the Dalai Lama's example, to write a biography of Buddha Shakyamuni. Then I was really shocked. How can you compare me, an ordinary follower of Buddha Shakyamuni? And according to Vipassika school of thought, the Love school of thought, Buddha Shakyamuni is said to have accumulated merits for 3 countless eons. And how can you compare the Buddha's legacies or Buddha's accomplishment to such an ordinary person like me? And I said, there is no way can you compare the Buddha's legacy or stories with me. So for you to understand the Buddha, it's very important to know, as in Prajapramita Sutra, that you should know the 4 kayas or the 4 states of Buddhahood. Without this understanding of the 4 kayas or 4 states, if you just roughly think of a Buddha in terms of having generated accumulations for 3 countless eons and attained enlightenment, this is not sufficient. But if you look further, and then you explore more, even in external matters, when you see something growing and they are subject to change, and because they're impermanent, from what caused them to become impermanent, and then if you correlate to this kind of law of nature of impermanence being caused by their own causes, and relate this to the fruition of Buddhahood, and then if you go on to try to understand the different kinds of states of Buddha bodies or Buddha states, and if you go on to explore more, to get more knowledge about the Buddhahood, is very important to know these qualities of states. And for that to happen at the causal level, we need to find out whether we do have this Buddha nature within us. So Buddhism, in a sutra called Dageshikdo, I don't know what the English is. So it speaks of three kinds of Buddhist seeds: the stained Buddhist seeds, or the substantial Buddhist seed, which is the cause of three states, and the seed, which is like the seed of the activities of. For that, they recite, and then in the sutra it says that the qualities of activities of Buddha reaches all beings, and there is no distinction in the emptiness of all beings. And since they have the seeds, the Buddha nature is pervasive to all beings. So this reference is used to quote or to infer that there could be three kinds of possibilities of Buddha nature. The fact that Buddha has unlimited activities reaching all sentient beings, to have that happen, the indivisibility of all the three secrets of Buddha is must. For that indivisibility of the three secrets to be non-dual, it's important to understand the concept of the great union. So Mahayana, to prove Mahayana as one of the teachings of Buddha, and through this kind of analogy, where you use the depth of Tantrayana to ascertain the possibility of Buddhahood, this actually will really bring us to this conclusion that actually, yeah, there is a possibility of Buddhahood, and because of that, Mahayana can be considered Buddha's authentic teaching. It makes a lot of sense that because of the non-duality of the three secrets, the pervasive nature of all the infinite deeds of Buddha can be reachable to all sentient beings. And if you contemplate in that manner, it makes a lot of sense. I remember one Christian friend, now he or she is no more, some 40 years or 30 years before it was like that. And then the person asked me, in Buddha's teaching, there are lots of reasoning, but finally all of these reasons come down to one scriptural quotation. So finally, he says, it's only the scriptural quotation that matters, because ultimately you will try to recite something from the text. And we seem to some extent to be following the same trend in the monastic debates, where we give so much importance to scriptural quotations, and the person has some truth in his word. So therefore, merely relying upon this text is not sufficient. But when it comes to the completely hidden phenomena, that's a different matter. But still, we can speak in terms of the authentication of Buddha's teaching based on the three kinds of analogies. And also in 400 verses, Nagarjuna says is somebody who has a doubt of the teachings of Buddha should contemplate the independent origination. And then that itself will give rise to conviction in you. So dependent origination is something that can be understood, can be explained. And through that understanding of dependent origination, the clinging or the intensity of grasping of self will to some extent reduce. So through your experience, from your little experience, you can infer that through reasoning you can develop conviction, and through conviction it will bring change in your mind. So through this, if you are to validate Buddha as an authentic teacher, infallible, it will really make us a lot of sense. So when it comes to the completely hidden phenomena, we of course need to rely on the scriptural quotations. But when it comes to the slightly hidden phenomena, we can definitely use reasoning to to its fullest, and this will really give rise to conviction in the later part of the completely hidden phenomena. But again, it says that even in those texts, which speaks highly, greatly, speaks in depth of the completely hidden phenomena. Here, you also try to see the contradiction, the hidden contradiction, the explicit or the implicit, or the former or the later words. And then the text itself should be free of any contradictions. So when it comes to the different kinds of system of universe, in different texts there are different kinds of statements in different texts. And again, when we try to reject the non-Buddhist views, we also use the logic of imperceptibility. When it comes to our own view, also we should apply the same kind of view, same kind of a reason of imperceptibility to ascertain whether something which actually is perceivable can be perceived or not. And if they cannot be perceived, then it means it doesn't exist. So here it says, so as I wrote here, that we need to develop a sound faith based on understanding. So mere hearing of the words is not sufficient. We need to analyze whether it is indeed that, or is there anything different from that. So through this, because we need to analyze, we need to have doubt. And without doubt, we cannot really analyze or experiment. And without analysis, we cannot really get rid of our doubts. Therefore, we need doubts. And doubts could be like true doubts, or doubts that are untrue or that are biased. So, but when you do analysis, experiment, you have to be in a state, in a position where anything is possible, and where you are not inclined to one position from the beginning. So with this kind of attitude, then you should analyze. So therefore, I have written here, therefore we should investigate by the analyzing and incurring with an unbiased and inclusive mind. So therefore, it's very important to have an unbiased, critical mind. Whoever he or she may be, when you are analyzing, you shouldn't wish that may it be like this and then start an investigation. You should think anything could be possible and then start your analysis. And then you can really come to the reality. Therefore, I've written, so therefore, if we are to develop this faith that is supported by understanding the outstanding work of the profound and vast tradition composed by the masters, universal known as Six Ornaments and Two Supremes, as well as others such as Buddha Pali and Arya Vimuktisena, are indispensable. So when we came in exile, I just met. And after coming into exile, I thought maybe it's good to meet with the scientists in order to acquire some knowledge of science. So at that time, I met some scientists. So before meeting those scientists, I was again warned by one of the friends. So to her, to that person, I shared that I was thinking of having some talks with the scientists, and then he or she warned me that it's very important for you to be careful, because the person told me science is a destroyer of religion. And then I thought for a while. But Shakyamuni himself actually gave us this right, as cited in the Tsongkhapa's Essence of Eloquent Instruction. It says that wise and intelligent scholars and bhikshus, you should not rely on me simply because of devotion or faith. Investigate them, yes, just as a goldsmith breaks, cuts, and burns to acquire the authentic kind of gold. Do the same with me. So through your own investigation and through your own experiments, if you can convince yourself, then accept it. You should not accept them because of your devotion or faith in me. So this is really scientific. The same kind of approach can be applied. The same kind of scientific approach that we have nowadays is actually applicable when we transcend to the path. Again, in the beginning of Tsongkhapa's eloquent instruction, he says somebody who accepts a notion or a view which contradicts reasoning, that person cannot be trusted. So somebody who accepts, when it says somebody who accepts something which is not in line with reasoning, it cannot be trusted. It means a lot, because reality should be something that can be critically analyzed and finally come to a conclusion where there is no adversary. So thinking this line, I feel the Dalai masters, they have really critically analyzed on Buddha's own teachings. And therefore, it's important for us to come to the truth through analysis, through experiment. And same is being done by the scientists. And so in this respect, we are same. And therefore, I try to, then I met with a scientist. Now it's more than 30 years, quite nearly 40 years since I have been having interaction with a scientist. In the beginning, it was few people, but gradually, among the scientists, there are so many who seem to have a lot of interest, growing interest in Buddhist view, or an authentic scientists, or the scholars, or the lecturers, or professors of science in different universities of America have been coming here, and we have actually some collections of have been teaching here, and and we have also a science program where monk scholars study from these professors. And myself, I have intensified my own interest in meeting with a scientist. And when I once gained full confidence in the approach of science, then I suggested that first we need to introduce the study of science in the monastery curriculums. And now we have already started that, and for some years it has been under progress. This I have done because I was confident of the approach of Buddhism and that of science. And it's not that I was trying to bring support from science because we are so incapable. We Buddhists are so incapable. Not because of that, but we are capable enough, and our approach is so scientific. Because of that, I introduced science in our curriculum here in the monasteries. And there are so many scientists who really give importance to mental happiness, and for them, knowledge about different states of mind and functionalities, or the map or the system of mind, they really want to hear from our own traditions. So, a tradition which throws light on them actually is Indian tradition, and specifically that of Buddhist tradition. And when it comes to divisions of the primary mind and secondary minds, or mental factors, both the classes of Abhidhamma, that's upper and lower, speaks a lot. But when it comes to subtle details, in relation to the subtle energies or subtle channels, it's only in the High-Sri Tantra that you can see. And Tibetan Buddhism is something which has all of these in their entirety well preserved. And now we have a comparative of texts collected by reading different of classical texts, and now the textbook is about to be published. And we have a division of the science that comes from Buddhism in it, and a division of the philosophical view. And then we also have a division of Buddhism, or the practice of Buddhism, or religion of Buddhism. So when you look at the great traditions of Buddha's own teachings, we can classify them into three: science that comes from Buddhism, view of Buddhism, and Buddhist practice. When it comes to science, a view, philosophical view, it's universal. It's not a matter of dharma or religion. With regards to this, the preservation of this, actually, the truth is that only in our Tibetan tradition is it well preserved, and nowhere can you see such. The more you think of the Buddha's teaching, the more clearer images you get, the more clearer pictures you get from constant analysis. Now again, turn to page. Just the page before that. 13th, page 13. According to Tibetan text. Don't worry, I have the English translation here. I'll just look for the first there. The last verse in the pattern. Okay. May I be blessed so that I plant the foundation for the path of freedom. May I understand the fundamental nature of reality and the meaning of... No, this is not it. Okay, this translation is not good. By understanding the nature of the true truths, one understands among the four truths what to be abandoned, what to be embraced. And through this practice, may I be able to develop a genuine faith or conviction in Buddha's tradition. So this is actually the right translation. The translation I found is not convincing. So in order for you to understand Buddha's teaching, it's important for you to understand within the four noble truths, the kind of truths you need to be, that needs to be abandoned and that need to be embraced or cultivated. When we speak of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, the Buddha is like the instructor, the teacher, and Sangha is like the examples that show you the example. Whereas the real medicine or the true Dharma is the true refuge is Dharma, like the medicine. So therefore, by understanding the nature of the realities or the different aspects of four noble truths, you only understand the truth, the Dharma, and the jewel of Dharma. For that to happen, you really need to understand the two truths. For example, to understand truth of cessation, you need to know the truth of the ultimate truth. So in Madhyamika, it says things empty of their own nature is what we call as ultimate nature or on independent nature. And the reason why they do not have any own independent nature is because of dependent origination. So, through the understanding of dependent origination, can you really posit the possibility of the cause and result? And without understanding the nature of cause and result, the theory of cause and result, you cannot really speak of a generation of truth of cessation through the practice of path. Basically, two truths are being taught by not only Buddhists but also non-Buddhists. But in this context, I'm speaking of from the perspective of Madhyamika, Prasankhya especially. So the source, textual reference is that of Ornament of Clear Realization, where it says Dup means establishing, Dhammadhamma means the two truths, and so forth. So it's a stanza in the first chapter. The more you see the qualities in the truth of Jewel, or the Dhamma of Jewel, then the more you have conviction in the Buddha, and you can see him as an infallible refuge. And through that, usually, naturally, you will have a deep sense of respect for those sanghas who genuinely and sincerely practice that dhamma in order to get enlightened. And then a strong sense of conviction in these three jewels as your refuge will naturally arise. So we'll start from where we left yesterday. Switching on. Yeah.
Oh yes, us. So yesterday we talked about the causal dependence. And then when we give deeper thought to this process of the dependent nature of things, we come to understand that things are only dependent on relative to other factors. And it's very clearly mentioned in the bright lamp of the clear words of Chandrakirti. And then when we talk about something having a label, of course we have to have a thing to which we label too. And similarly, at the same time we also need to have a name in order to refer to something. So there's a reference and the label. And so they are interdependent. And therefore in the Ratnavali of Guru the Nagarjuna says that things are only merely nominal. So things could be, phenomena could be included either in the composite phenomena or non-composite phenomena. And so things are, or forms, or physical things are merely nominal. And also, the mere absence of the obstruction of things is also nominal. So, but then, although we label things, if we try to find the thing in that the referent point, the referent object in the object itself, of course, we cannot find if we search in that. Sometimes when we say things are merely labeled, the name itself, the label, the designation itself seems to have some kind of an autonomy, but that's not the case. But when we try to search for the things, the referent will not be able to point to anything as being this or that within that phenomena, and therefore the name itself also is not findable. And then in the Jonang tradition, there is this mention
So it says that both the external phenomena as well as the subjective mind cannot be found under analysis, which looks for an entity which actually is that object within the object itself, and therefore they are without, they are ineffable. And if you can stay within that state of ineffableness, ineffability, and therefore you will be able to relax in the nature of the mind itself. This mind which is tired of having wandered in samsara, as we find in the Semnyingyeso. And so then it would be like we would be able to have a great rest, as it is said in the Chakrasamvara Tantra. So in order to go through the independent nature of things, we'll cover Master Nagarjuna's text, Lokatita Stovam, on page number 2 of the English text, a blue book, and in the green book, it's on page 3 in English. So this hymn to the Buddha, the world transcendent, was written by Nagarjuna, and this is one of the texts that is under the category of texts that were written by him, which comes under the category of Theistic, the collection of praise or hymns. Although there is no explanatory transmission of this particular text, I have received the reading transmission, the oral transmission of the text from the Gaden Rinpoche, Rizong Rinpoche. So in Sanskrit, the title is Lokatita Stovam, and in Tibetan, Jigtena Devateba, which translates the hymn to the world transcendent, homage to the youthful Manjushri. First we'll have tea. The qualities of Buddha is inconceivable, the qualities of his Dharma is inconceivable, the qualities of this Sangha are conceivable. And I make this offering to the inconceivable ones. Verse number 1, I bow to you, the world transcendent, you who are versed in the gnosis of absence. So here, the absence of gnosis, the gnosis of absence here refers to the absence of duality of subject and object. And finally, it refers to that state of the total pacification of all elaborations, all conceptual elaborations and fabrications. And so, as it is referred to in the salutation verse of Nagarjuna's fundamental wisdom, for the benefit of the world, you have suffered long with great compassion, that apart from the mere aggregates, no sentient being exists, you uphold. So the Buddhas, while being always remaining in this state of free from elaborations or fabrications, they still, by being able to see everything, the predispositions of sentient beings and so forth, the varieties of things, it says, yet great, you uphold not sentient beings exist. Yet, great sage, you continue to remain perfectly immersed in the welfare of beings, it says. As I usually recite the verse of Nagarjuna's fundamental wisdom, which is, I prostrate to the Gautama, who gave, out of his compassion, gave the holy teaching, taught the holy teaching in order to rid us of all elaboration, all wrong views. So this is referring to that kind of point. Number 3, wise one. Verse number 2. Although I do not know the detailed explanation of this line, the first 2 lines, but in one of the texts by the Nagarjuna's commentary on the mind of awakening, bodhicitta vivarana, which comments on the Guhya Samaja, verses from Guhya Samaja, where he, when in his text, Nagarjuna, so perhaps the Nagarjuna's text also rejects the non-Buddhist views. So the aggregates exist, but there is no autonomous, independent self which governs the aggregates. So this is rejecting the non-Buddhist view of Atma theory or soul theory. So yet, great sage, you continue to remain perfectly immersed in the welfare of beings. So our self is merely labeled on the basis of the aggregates, the psychophysical aggregates, mind and body constituents. So the Buddha has seen this selflessness of, this subtle selflessness of in the lack of independent self. So the root of samsara, suffering, is the unruly mind, undisciplined mind, and this which in turn comes from the because of misknowledge or ignorance about the reality of things, reality of phenomena, which as opposed to that, the Buddhas see the reality as it is, and therefore the Buddhas are those who see the reality as it is, are able to feel compassion towards those who are ignorant about it. And so, as it is said in Bodhicitta Vivarana, in the Dzogchen time also, there is this term used, which is the without basis, totally without basis and ground. So in Dodrup's commentary, he says that we have to understand this term by referring to the great classical text written by the Indian masters, the authentic Indian masters. So once you have quite a good understanding of this reality of things, then you will be able to have compassion towards those who are bound in this illusion about not seeing the reality as it is, and because of their ignorance, they cause themselves more suffering, create sufferings, causes of suffering, and therefore, because they do so, you would be able to feel greater compassion towards them, because you know the root of samsara, and that there is an antidote to put an end to that. And therefore, seeing that there is an antidote which goes against this, then you'll be able to have this compassion feeling. How nice if these sentient beings could be freed from their ignorance. So, wise one, you have declared to the intelligent ones that your aggregates too are comparable to an illusion, a mirage, a city of Gandharva in a dream. So the omniscient Buddha, who see the reality as it is, they see that the psychophysical aggregates, which are basis for the designation of a person, I mean, these themselves are empty of any inherent existence. And in this Heart Sutra also, there is mention of the 5 aggregates also are empty of inherent nature. And so, in the Chinese translation, the term also is missing. It just says that these 5 aggregates are empty of inherent nature. So, because the Chinese Buddhism spread to Japan, Korea, and Vietnam, I mean, these also the translations in these languages also may not have this word also. But the source of all these different translations into the other languages is Sanskrit, in which the term also is found, and which is very significant. I have seen about three different commentaries on this Heart Sutra that are extant in the Tenjur, and so all of these 3 commentaries have this word also. Saying the 5 aggregates also are empty of inherent existence. And so, the important thing here to understand is that not only the person is empty of inherent nature, but the aggregates are also empty of inherent nature. So which shows both the selflessness of phenomena and selflessness of persons. And with regard to the selflessness of a person, it is referring actually to the subtlest form of the selflessness, which is the absence of inherent self. Otherwise, according to certain philosophical traditions, they say that the aggregates, the psychophysical aggregates are substantially exist. They do substantially exist, but then the person is labeled. And so they still hold on to some kind of inherentness in the psychophysical aggregates. But then through the 5-fold reasoning and the 7-fold reasoning to prove selflessness, it seems it is easier to understand, comprehend the selflessness of a person. So, through this reasoning, when you have some certainty about the selflessness of a person, and when you use that understanding, the logic onto the psychophysical aggregates, then you will not have the same kind of certainty that you gain. And therefore, it seems that through these kind of reasonings, these reasonings actually, what they get at is the absence of the substantially existent self, and not the absence of inherently existent self. So they are not rejecting this. And therefore, as Nagarjuna says, as long as there is a grasping on the psychophysical aggregates, there will still be a grasping at this a person inherent. So this is what it means, that there will still be inherent grasping at an inherent I or a self. And therefore, the term also in the Heart Sutra, talking about the 5 aggregates being inherently empty, is very significant. And so why would you not uphold that clearly they are just like reflections? So whatever effects there are, if they have some inherent existence, then they cannot be contrived, or they cannot be changed, brought about. The changes cannot happen to them, and therefore what that could mean is that the causes, the conditions, we cannot bring them about. And therefore this is totally contradictory to what we actually perceive with our own eyes. So this is something very obvious to us. And so from this what we understand also is that the effect is related and dependent on its effect is dependent on its causes. And from that we also can infer that the cause itself is also dependent on the effects. And so in relation to the effect, there is a cause and vice versa. And there is no inherently existing cause and effect. So verse number 5. And as said in Ratnavali, the jewel garland, there is mention of if there is no element, then how can there be form and so forth? It can be seen. And so, because the elements, the very subtle factors which give rise to the grosser elements, how can these grosser ones exist if there is no such a form and so forth, if there is no element themselves? So it seems we should actually understand a subtler level of the elements in connection with in the context of the Nagarjuna's text. In Abhidhamma Samuccaya, the subtle particles, the infinitesimal particles, seem to be very, very subtle. And then from there, perhaps we can also find the relationship between the suffering and its cause, its origin. And usually we say, of course, the origin is the cause of the suffering. But then, if you were to look at the origin of the causes, then of course we point to karma and then the destructive emotions. So what is that karma? So how does this body and the physical things are brought about by this karma? If the karmas do the karmas become the substantial cause or the contributing cause? If they are either of these, how do they become so? And in the Dharmakirti's Brahmana Samuccaya, commentary on valid cognition, it says something which is not consciousness cannot give rise to a consciousness, because it's not a substantial cause of it. Yeah. So, and we can extend that logic to the matter, whether whether something which is not a matter can become a substantial cause of a matter or not. And then we can, if we go into the Tantra, of course we talk about the very subtle wind energy or prana energy, and so that is we have to check whether this subtle wind energy, prana energy, can also become substantial cause of some mind or not. And so, and then the first verse number 5 refers to the aggregate of body or form, and then the next verse, verse number 6, refers to the aggregate of feeling or sensation. In Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary on Madhyamaka Avatara, there is mention of what actually feels and what is felt. And, so, and then between these two, there is the action of feeling. So what we can see here is that we cannot finger point our finger to something being this and that, but they are interdependent. If we were to find something, whether these the feeling, the felt, and the action of feeling do have some objective existence or not, objectively from their own side, we cannot find them. Of course, generally speaking, we can say the thing, the feeling and so forth cannot be found under analysis. Verse number 7 says, if a word and a referent are not different, the word, because if they were one, then the word fire would burn one's mouth. If they are different, there will be no comprehension. This you, the speaker of truth, have stated. Verse number 8, an agent is autonomous and his action too. This too you have expressed conventionally. So there's no actor which is independently existent, but an actor exists without being analyzed and conventionally, nominally. And therefore you uphold that they are established only in terms of mutual dependence. Verse number 9, there exists no agent, no subject to, no merit exists, they arise through dependence. Though in the sutra it says there is no birth. What takes birth, what comes about, doesn't have a nature of birth. And so the verse number 9, it says, so dependently risen they are born, so you have proclaimed, O master of words. Verse number 10, without being known, it's not an object of knowledge, and so forth. And so the objects, the subjective mind which perceives them, and are all interdependent. Verse number 11, if the characteristic is different from the characterized, the characterized would exist without the characteristic. You have clearly stated also that neither exists if they are conceived of as non-different. And then verse number 12 also. So in order to help sentient beings to overcome their delusions, the dualistic perceptions, conceptions, the Buddha taught, dependent origination, it says. And verse number 13, an existent thing does not arise, nor does an non-existent as well, nor do both. So some would say that if the things are merely imputed by our conception, by our thought, then we could have anything through our thought. But that's not the case. If the right condition and causes are not there, we cannot have the effects accordingly. And therefore, they say that since things have their own particular specific distinct causes and conditions, therefore, they should have some independent inherent nature in them. And so Rinpoche says that what for the ignorant one is the reason to prove that there is inherent existence. For the wise ones, then they are the reason to prove otherwise. So if things have some essential nature, existence, then what could the causes do something, anything to them? So if something exists inherently, then causes cannot do anything to it. And then the reason of the diamond splinter, so this is referred to this. An existent thing does not exist. If things exist inherently or have some essential existence, then causes and conditions do not have any function on them. And because of that, they should exist forever, because they cannot change and disintegrate. So verse number 15, So, do they exist? Do the effect arise after the cause has ceased, or what? The Subtantrika Madhyamaka is asked. And so, to that, notice number 16. Therefore, notice number 17. Therefore, you fully understood this world to have an emergence from ideation, and even when emerging, you have declared there is no arising and no disintegration. Verse number 18. So when you do some critical analysis, then the samsara and nirvana on the base within the context of someone who has delusions, the person is within samsara, and then there's all kinds of samsaric attributes to him. And when the person is freed from these delusions, the destructive emotions, then they are freed and reach nirvana. And so on the basis of that mind, whether it is deluded or undiluted, free from this delusion, when you have samsaric beings and enlightened beings, or beings of who have reached nirvana. And so in the Jagasamvara Tantra, there is this mention of the hay, symbolism of the hay syllable, which is to say that the mind is empty of any inherent nature. And similarly in this in the Mahamudra and Dzogchen, and then in the Sakya, the three vision, the three continuums. So all these are based on the explanation of the clear light mind, the reality, the real true nature of the mind itself. And in the Charyamilpaka, when it deals with mental isolation, it teaches in great detail. The emphasis is more on the emptiness of mind rather than other phenomena. Verse number 19, 20. Verse number 20 says, that which originates through the dependence, this you maintain to be empty. And so dependence is the reasoning, which is called the king of reasonings to prove emptiness. And so first you should understand the dependence in terms of causality, from which you understand that the independence or in relation to an effect, something is called a cause, and therefore the cause is related to or its effect. And then you go into higher or deeper levels of dependence, and therefore you find that things are dependent, which means they cannot be independent. They cannot have independent existence. But when we look at things, our experience is such that things are not dependent on other factors, but they seem to have some kind of a solid existence from their own side. But when you use the reasoning that, of course, this is the way it appears, way the things appear to me, but the reality is that it's dependent, and therefore it's merely dependent and not without any independent existence. The 24th chapter of Mula Madhyamaka Karika of Nagarjuna is the most important chapter, so you have to really study it. And then chapter 18, I read this in this sequence. First 26, chapter 26, which shows the 12 links of dependent origination, beginning with the ignorance and so forth. And it says, because of ignorance obscuring our mind, we take rebirth. And then the verse number 24 shows that of the selflessness of things, where the questions and qualms raised. Of course, the debates between the philosophical schools are actually debates about what we also have the experience about. And then to these qualms and questions or arguments raised by the realist schools of Buddhism, Nagarjuna responds them that things are empty of inherent nature. So first you have to understand why the other schools argue that emptiness is not acceptable. Then you, otherwise you'll just be saying, oh, everything becomes empty, and from emptiness this arise as deity and so forth, which means really nothing to you. So the realist schools say that if you say things are empty, then nothing should exist, and therefore you are a nihilist. And then Nagarjuna, after having raised those questions, then he rejects, answers them. You should also understand how other schools actually try to argue against emptiness, and what Nagarjuna responds to them, how Nagarjuna responds to them. And then in the text written by Lama Tsongkhapa, because of dependent origination, the Buddha does not show the path to those who are fallen into extremes. And so this is the highest reasoning. And then also Lama Tsongkhapa in his three principled aspects of the path says, once you are able to see that without alternating but simultaneously the infallibility of cause and conditions giving rise to understanding of the empty of inherent nature and vice versa, then one has actually completed the analysis. And so Nagarjuna says that those who object to his view, his position, do not understand the purpose, the nature, and the essence of the emptiness. So when we talk about emptiness, you have to be able to deconstruct, destroy all kinds of objectification of things. So therefore, because of that, the realist schools of Buddhism, even those who reject externality of things, although they may be able to stop the lust and attachment independence on the external things, but then the experiences within, such as pain and pleasure, I mean, they still hold on to them to have some kind of intrinsic nature. And so you cannot say, oh, these also do not have inherent the external nature, because then, because you also hold on to them as having some autonomous existence. And so we see things have some kind of and similarly, when you leave something, even though you try to prove that things have no inherent, no true existence, but then you leave something which has to be there to to designate or the names and so forth, then you still have something to hold on to grasp on to, and that means you are not destroying the objectification of things. And Nagarjuna says that when we talk about emptiness, emptiness is not something, some kind of a called solidified kind of a property, but it is a property or quality which we actually establish onto the things that we establish to be empty. And so we have to also, after having destroyed all objectification of things, when we come out of that meditation, that absorption in the non-objectification of things, then we have to also be able to posit that things do have existence as well. So here, emptiness doesn't mean the nihilism, that there is nothing. Nothingness is not the meaning of emptiness. So dependent origination is said to be empty. And so things are dependent because of that reason they are not non-existent. And therefore, because they are dependent, it means that they do not have any objectified or any inherent existence. That no independent entity exists, you, the peerless, proclaimed in the lion's roar. Now, verse number 22 and 21 now. So, which refers to, of course, we say, oh, emptiness is a very sacred thing. But then people may still hold on to emptiness as being some independent entity. If you do that, then that kind of view is something which is beyond any cure, it says. Number 22. And so the true nature of things, being empty of any inherent nature, is the reality of things. And so, with regard to that emptiness, of course, the nature of emptiness, the emptiness of a mind of a pure realized beings, enlightened beings, and non-enlightened beings are same in nature. Verse number 24. Didn't it? Verse 22. 23, 24. Verse number line sumrare. Sumrare. But the tail is we have covered verse number 22 and 23, and verse number 24. His Holiness says in his text, there are only 3 lines, but maybe it has 4 lines. We have to check. So His Holiness is checking his own becha, and he finds that pages are missing or something. So verse number 22 says, since they are inert, dependent, empty, like an illusion, and arisen of conditions, you have made it familiar to the world that all phenomena lack reality. And verse number 23 says, there is nothing that you have brought forth, there is nothing that you have negated. You have comprehended that suchness, as it was before, so it is afterwards. Without entering the meditation, as shown by the noble ones, can consciousness ever become signless? That's verse number 24. So it has only 3 lines. Without entering the meditation, as shown by the noble ones, can consciousness ever become signless? So that's correct. There are only 3 lines to this verse. And then verse number 25, without entering signlessness, there is no liberation, you have declared. So you presented this signlessness in its entirety in the great vehicle. So this verse is a reason to say that, to prove that the even the Arahats and Pratyeka Buddha noble beings, the Arya beings, realize emptiness. They also in the basic vehicle sutras, the emptiness of phenomena is also shown. But in the Mahayana, not only that signlessness is or emptiness is shown. So it says, so you presented the signlessness in its entirety in the great vehicle sutras. Verse number 26, by praising you, a vessel worthy of praise, whatever merits I may have obtained, through this may all beings, without exception, become free from the bondage of signs. This concludes the hymn of the Buddha, the world transcendent, composed by Nagarjuna. This translated and edited in Tibetan by the Indian abbot Krishna Pandita and the Tibetan translator Sitim Gerwa. And so we have covered this text, taking off from the term dependent origination. And now let's move on to the stages of meditation. So yesterday we read on page 11 where it says that the omniscience has its roots in compassion and arises from a cause, and so with regards to the skillful means, perfection of skillful means, it could refer to the those of the mundane and supramundane, the superior wisdom. And so first, the transcendent superior wisdom or insight comes later, of course. But when we take refuge, we have to have understanding. It's very important to have the understanding of emptiness. And similarly, when we talk about bodhicitta, which has the two aspirations, Vimuktisena says, with wisdom, what you focus on is that of the enlightenment, whereas the aspirations focus on compassion focuses on sentient beings. And therefore, in order to have a really powerful bodhicitta within yourself, you have to have some understanding of emptiness. So as we said earlier, once you understand emptiness, then you'll be able to have real, powerful, intense sort of compassion towards sentient beings who are ignorant about this reality of things. Although in the Lamrim, of course, the superior insight is, or in terms of penetrative insight, is taught in the special insight chapter, but then we have to take that understanding into right from the beginning. We have to actually use that understanding, although it is presented in a sequential manner according in the Lamrim after the concentration, the calm abiding chapter. Therefore, if you're interested in achieving omniscient, so we have page 11, moved by compassion, bodhisattvas take the vow to liberate all sentient beings. Then, by overcoming their self-centered outlook, they engage eagerly and continuously in the very difficult practices of accumulating merit and insight. having entered into this practice, they will certainly complete the collection of merit and insight. Accomplishing the accumulation of merit and insight is like having omniscience itself in the palm of your hand. Therefore, since compassion is the only root of omniscience, you should become familiar with this practice from the very beginning. So as I said earlier, what this shows is, first we covered the causal dependence, which is about the reality of things on the basis, the ground level. And since this is the case, when you look more closely, then you come to the understanding of the dependence in terms of designation, the designated dependence. And within that, there is the merely called posited, imputed, designated things. In according to Savatantrika Madhyamakas, we also understand how things are whole, and there is dependence between a whole and its parts. And then when you go deeper into this understanding of the dependence, then the highest thought of Nagarjuna, which is who is commented by Buddha Palita and Chandrakirti, who do not assert or accept that there is any essence in things, and therefore they come to the conclusion of things being merely nominal and labeled. So you can have the understanding of the designated dependence, which can be understood in terms of the designated ones, the positing things through designation, and then positing things through as being merely designated, merely in name. Chandarakshita, in his great book of epistemology, Tattva Samgraha, there is a commentary to this by his disciple Kamalashila. Kamalashila says, by understanding causal dependence, you have to take up the practices and you have to engage in the practices of adopting things which are conducive to your practice, and then discarding others. And then, understanding the designated dependence, then you create the causes for liberation. Whereas the previous one, through the understanding of causal dependence, you create the causes for higher rebirth. And so this is very relevant. And therefore, Nagarjuna says, the interdependent nature of things is the treasure of the cherished treasure of the teaching of the Buddhas. Because on dependence on and reliance on the understanding of this dependent nature of things, then you also have the means, the processes of developing the paths or the practices which lead to higher rebirth and also liberation, and then finally omniscience as well. And therefore, the ground level, understanding of the ground level of dependent originations, then of course you can also think in terms of the things being impermanent and being in the nature of suffering, impermanence in the sense that things are disintegrating moment by moment. So that disintegration is not caused by a third cause, but it's brought about by its own cause. And therefore, whatever is produced is necessarily impermanent. And so, and then in particular, with regard to our own contaminated, impure body and mind, which are brought about by the destructive emotions and karma, And so, therefore, because of this reason, it is in the nature of suffering. The psychophysical aggregates are in the nature of suffering. And therefore, through the understanding of impermanence, it leads you to the understanding of selflessness as well. Of course, there are many different ways of interpreting this. The understanding of impermanence leads to the understanding of the suffering nature of our psychophysical aggregates, and through that we are led into also that of the understanding of selflessness. Then the Lama says this is very difficult to understand. So when we talk about those aggregates, it is made up of so many components, factors. Whereas when we think about the I, it seems to have some kind of a singularity. And therefore, in Jitun Sherab Singh is guidance to the understanding of emptiness or selflessness. First, he leads disciples through the understanding into the understanding of gross level of selflessness. And then through that he leads the disciples into the subtle understanding of selflessness. Perhaps, although I do not have the experiences, when I think about it, of course, I feel this may be the case. When you have some understanding of the gross level of selflessness of a person, which means that the person is absent of any self-sufficient, substantially existent I. And then using that understanding, then maybe when you use that, the reasoning through which you have come to that conclusion, use that reasoning, to extend that same reasoning to the psychophysical aggregates, then perhaps you are let into the deeper level of the selflessness of persons. In Bodhicitta Vivarana, Master Nagarjuna says the highest form or the highest teaching for transformation of the mind is emptiness, whereas the teachings on impermanence and suffering and then the grosser selflessness are to train the mind. And so when you see that the things are absent of inherent existence, then you'll see how these the destructive emotions are the ones which actually cause us more suffering. And so no sooner these emotions arise, I mean, it immediately causes to lose us our peace of mind. If we look in the world, I mean, we see this happening in everyday life, and because people willingly kind of indulge in these negative thoughts and emotions, and therefore cause lots of troubles and problems in the world. And so you have to find that you have to see the fault of these destructive emotions, and that it is a distorted view, or seeing things as having some kind of a true existence, and also clinging on to such a way of existence, and therefore, and then you see that when you see the reality of things, that things are dependent, then you see the things otherwise, and therefore these delusions can be overcome. So the Buddha first showed the reality of the ground at the ground level, and then he goes on to say, teach about how to adopt and what to discard. And therefore, having done that, then the Buddha goes on to say that once you have overcome all the destructive emotions and suffering, then these will not come back again. So once you have seen the truth directly, and there is no reversal process from there, you cannot fall back into lower experiences. And so the Four Noble Truths are the fundamental teaching of Buddhism, which we have to understand. So So having understood this, the reality of things, and then how to avoid some things and adopt others, then you engage into the path, and seeing that the liberation is something that you can actually actualize within yourself. And there is a possibility of something called omniscience, which comes through one's own effort by overcoming these negativities within ourselves. And then you will have the interest to actually engage in the path. Otherwise, without understanding the whole process of how you lead yourself to those states of enlightenment and so forth, then it's just a blind faith. And therefore, having first laid down the reality on the ground level, then the next process is how to go about with the path, which is shown indicated by the Heart Sutra mantra of Heart Sutra, which is that the Tagadagada Paragata Parasamgata Bodhicitta Swaha. So page number 13. All sentient beings desire happiness and do not desire misery. I'm sorry, the Companion of Perfect Dharma reads, page number 12. O Buddha, a bodhisattva should not train in many practices. If a bodhisattva properly holds one dharma and learns it perfectly, he has all the Buddha's qualities in the palm of his hand. And if you ask what that one dharma is, it is great compassion. The Buddhas have already achieved all their own goals, but remain in the cycle of existence for as long as there are sentient beings. This is because they possess great compassion. They also do not enter the immensely blissful abode of Nirvana like their hearers. Considering the interests of sentient beings first, they abandon the peaceful abode of Nirvana as if it were a burning iron house. Therefore, great compassion alone is the unavoidable cause and non-abiding Nirvana of the Nirvana. And so it shows that compassion is the root of enlightenment, omniscient mind. Because omniscient mind, when you reach Buddhahood, the Buddhahood is that state which is free from both the obscurations of knowledge and obscuration of the afflicted thoughts and emotions. So, in order to overcome the cognitive obscuration, you only do not, it's not sufficient to have compassion and bodhicitta, but emptiness, but you also have the bodhicitta within it. And therefore, the meditation on emptiness with the help of bodhicitta becomes a complete meditation on emptiness. You are meditating on the emptiness with the full purpose, the complete purpose. And so, as I mentioned earlier, compassion focuses on sentient beings. We have to feel compassionate towards sentient beings and then wish to have attain liberation and enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Compassion is that attitude, that way of looking at sentient beings who are suffering. So sometimes we think the compassion means some kind of attitude of feeling pity towards somebody. That's not the case. In this, when you say, "Oh, what a pity," you actually there is almost this sense of looking down on the other person. But we have to be able to look at others as higher than oneself, as it is mentioned in our 8 verses of Demand Training. Looking at yourself as the lowest amongst all. Of course, merely wishing sentient beings to be out of suffering is there even in the hearers. Whereas the resolve to actually, the determination and resolve to actually help sentient beings out of suffering is this great compassion, that you have the determination to help others out of suffering. Taking the responsibility by thinking of the reasonings based on the understanding of Tathagata Garbha and so forth. And so you think that I will actually take the responsibility of helping all sentient beings out of suffering. And so all different teachings, religious traditions teach compassion. And particularly Buddhism is, the teaching of Buddhism is rooted in compassion. So cultivation of compassion So first you have to have beings who are near and dear to you, and then you have to understand, recognize the deeper suffering of pervasive conditioning, existential suffering. As I said earlier, yesterday, mentioned those of the vehicles of the Brahma, and then the vehicles of the gods, and then the vehicles of the Buddhism. So when it comes to this, the third one, we have to think about the conditioning, pervasive suffering of sentient beings, of samsara. In order to have compassion, seeing that suffering, then you have to think of suffering of yourself, the pervasive suffering upon yourself, and have this sense of renunciation. So you have to think about the suffering that is on yourself, the pervasive suffering. So until you have overcome the delusions, the destructive emotions, you will not be able to overcome this third kind of suffering. And therefore, Nagarjuna says, by putting an end to the karma and destructive emotions, you will be liberated. So that ending of the karma and delusions has to happen through the antidote, by applying the antidote which puts an end to them. And therefore, you have to think about the suffering of oneself first. And when you understand your own condition of suffering, having this the pervasive suffering, the deeper suffering, then you will be able to understand this suffering of others better. Then you have better compassion. So in order to have the renunciation, you have to think about the not becoming preoccupied with or captivated by the pleasures of this life and the pleasures of the next life. And therefore, in the this is slightly different from the Lamrim tradition, which is to say that here the teaching is given from the point of view of turning away from this samsara. So first of all, you think about the suffering of yourself, the suffering here referring to the pervasive suffering. And then through that you develop renunciation, thought of renunciation, and with that renunciation, then you go focus on others and being suffering and feel compassion. The way to meditate on compassion will be taught from the outset. Begin the practice by, it's under the title, Developing Equanimity, the Root of Loving Kindness. So try to actualize the impartiality towards all sentient beings by eliminating attachment and hatred. All sentient beings desire happiness and do not desire misery. Think deeply about how, in this beginning cycle of existence, there is not one sentient being who has not been my friend and relative hundreds of times. Therefore, since there is no ground for being attached to some and hating others, I shall develop the mind of equanimity towards all sentient beings. Begin the meditation on equanimity by thinking of neutral person, and then consider people who are friends and foes. So how you do that is, first of all, when you do confession, we make this distinction between ourselves and the negative deeds that we have committed, and you feel remorse, you regret the wrongdoing, your wrongdoing. But then you're saying here, when you say this, you are actually separating yourself from the wrongdoing itself. And similarly, we have to think about the people who cause harm to others, but we have to criticize the action, the harmful action, whereas we can feel compassion towards the person who is doing that harmful action. If someone who is a friend to you, who does something good to you today, if that person turns out to be your enemy, the person is the same, because he or she does something good to you, you consider him or her as being a friend. Whereas when he or she does something wrong to you, then you consider him or her as your adversary. And so we make the distinction between the person and the action. So even your adversary is someone who wants no suffering but happiness, and therefore the person who is causing you harm can help you to actually cultivate virtues within yourself. You can actually develop the virtues within yourself. So in the 8 verses of mind training, it says, even those to whom I have done good and I have great hope, when they turn out to be my harm me, mistreat me, then may I be able to look at them as my spiritual guru. And therefore it is very important to differentiate between the action and the actor. And otherwise some people say that when we talk about tolerance, practicing tolerance and looking at our adversaries as being spiritual gurus, I mean they also confuse it with looking at the action as also being something positive. That's not the case. We have to differentiate between these two. In the bodhisattva vows, if you do not overcome someone accordingly when they do something wrong, acknowledging that action to be wrong, then that's wrong against the bodhisattva vows. And so you can look at the action being wrong, but the person as being an object of compassion. So after the mind has developed equanimity towards all sentient beings, meditate on loving kindness, most in the mental continuum with the water of loving kindness, prepared as you would a piece of fertile ground. When the seed of compassion is planted in such a mind, germination will be swift, proper and complete. Once you have irrigated the mind stream with loving kindness, meditate on compassion. The compassionate mind has the nature of wishing all sentient beings to be free from suffering. Meditate on compassion for all sentient beings, because the beings in the 3 realms of existence are intensely tortured by the 3 realms. And so when you think about suffering on yourself, then you will develop the renunciation, whereas when you do extend the same logic to others, then you have compassion. In the 3 realms, 3 principal aspects of the path, Lama Tsongkhapa says this: we are carried away by the forceful currents, and we are enveloped in the darkness of ignorance, and we are bound by in the cage by that of the self-existing. It's called grasping at self-existence. And when you think, and then we are all called tortured by the 3 types of suffering. And therefore, you have to think about this condition which the mother sentient beings are in. And so you can use this same verse to extend the same logic to practice or cultivate renunciation as well. Think about your own suffering and your own condition of being encaged and shrouded in the dense darkness of ignorance, and being encaged in this distorted view of self, holding on to, grasping at self of things, and being under the sway of suffering. The Buddha has said that the heat and the other types of pain constantly torture being of self and held very long time. He has also said that hungry ghosts are scorched by hunger and thirst and experience immense physical suffering. We can also see animals suffering in many miserable ways. They each eat each other. They eat each other, become angry and are hurt and killed. We can see that human beings too experience various acute kinds of pain, not able to find what they want. They are resentful and harm each other. They suffer the pain of losing the beautiful things they want and confronting the ugly things they do not want, as well as pain of poverty. There are those whose minds are bound by various fetters of disturbing emotions like craving, desire. And so this shows meditating on compassion by thinking of the suffering nature of sentient beings. And then others in the turmoil with different types of views. These are all causes of misery. Therefore, they are always in painful. They're like being on precipice. So this particular shows the kind of cause that we create in order so that we may suffer in the future. And the next one shows those of the pervasive suffering. The suffering of the changeable suffering, and the next verse, the next paragraph, pervasive misery and so forth, shows that of the pervasive nature of suffering, the pervasive existential conditioning suffering. Page number 14. Therefore, see all wandering beings as immersed in a great fire of misery. Think that they are all like you and not desiring misery at all. Alas, all my beloved sentient beings are in such pain. What can I do to set them free and make their suffering your own? Whether you are engaged in one point of meditation or pursuing your own activities, meditate on compassion at all times, focusing on all sentient beings and wishing that they all be free from suffering. Begin by meditating on your friends and relatives. Recognize how they experience the various sufferings that have been explained. Then, having seen all sentient beings as equal, with no difference between them, you should meditate on sentient beings. And next paragraph, which begins with, just as a mother responds to her own small beloved and suffering child, this one shows the measure of having actually the experience of compassion. Meditate on loving kindness begins with friends and people who are fond of you. People you are fond of. It has the nature of wishing that they meet with happiness. Gradually extend the meditation to include strangers. And so that paragraph is done. So it shows the thought of cultivating renunciation. Indirectly, but explicitly it shows how to cultivate compassion, and in order to do that, how you have to actually think of your own suffering. So bodhicitta is of two types, conventional and ultimate. Conventional, page number 16. Conventional bodhicitta is cultivation of the initial thought that aspires to attain unsurpassable and perfectly consummated Buddhahood in order to benefit all wandering sentient beings after having taken the vow out of compassion to release all of them from suffering. That conventional bodhicitta should be cultivated in the process similar to that described in the chapter on moral ethics in the Bodhisattva Bhumi. And so bodhicitta is twofold, conventional and ultimate. And with regard to conventional bodhicitta, you have to think about the suffering of sentient beings and think of bringing all sentient beings out of suffering. And in order to do that, you think of becoming enlightened for the sake of sentient beings. And so that is the conventional bodhicitta. And then, having done that, then you engage in the practices of bodhisattvas, by promising to engage in that, the practices of bodhisattvas, you take the bodhisattva vows. So having taken the bodhisattva vows and having vowed to engage in the bodhisattva practices, then engaging conventional bodhicitta becomes the engaging bodhicitta, whereas just merely having the wish to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings is the aspiring bodhicitta. And now, so we move on to the next text. The 8 verses of mind training by Geshe Langri Thangpa. It's on page 52 in English. And in the green book, if you have the green book, it's on 97, I'm sorry. This particular text is very short, but very profound. So if you could memorize this text and then go over the meaning, think them over, it would be very useful. Sometimes I also use this when there is delay in the flights schedules. Then it's really harmful. Otherwise, people just complain. The plane is delayed, the flight is delayed, and so forth, and they complain. When other people do that, if you could just go think about lojong, the mind training practices, and also meditate on emptiness, contemplate, it would be very helpful. So this text has 8 verses only, and it's very easy to memorize. So you should memorize it. So please make sure that you have this in your mind, in your memory, the next time we meet. So Geshe Langri Thangpa was a great bodhisattva who has true experience of the lojong practice. So he was a disciple of Potowa, and also Sharawa was a disciple of Potowa. And so they were really great masters. I have received the explanatory transmission from Tijang Rinpoche. There is a commentary on this text in the great book of Lojong, which is called, which has over 100 different lojong texts. You can find the translation by Thupten Jimbala. Verse number 1, verse number 2, verse number 3 is done. Verse number 4 now. Verse number 5 says, when others out of jealousy treat me wrongly with abuse and slander, may I take upon myself the defeat and offer the others the victory. Verse number 6, 7. So up to verse number 7, what the text shows is the conventional bodhicitta. And then verse number 8 shows that of the ultimate bodhicitta. It says, may all of this remain unsullied by the stains of the 8 mundane concerns. This is very important. Even if we are doing some dharma practice, you will have this kind of worldly concern. You will have expectations from others praising you, saying that, oh, this person is, that you are a good practitioner, and you will also kind of expect others to praise you while you are doing some practice. So I always think of this verse where it says, whenever I interact with another, may I view myself as the lowest among all. So this is very important for any practitioner, true practitioner of religion, because otherwise you are taken away, carried away by the mundane concerns. And then, even though you may externally look as a practitioner, look like a practitioner, you may not become a true practitioner as in the 37 verses of Bodhisattva practices says. And then next we have the 37 practices of Bodhisattvas. I received the guidance explanation on it from Kundalama Lama Tenzin Gyaltsen here, perhaps in Bodh Gaya. It's on page 56 in the blue book and 103 on begins at 103 on in the green book. Jabji Tushi Rinpoche was a great master of the Nyingma tradition, and he was a great practitioner of the Vinaya. And his attendant has requested me to give a transmission of this text. So I will just read through it. Namo Logeshwaraya, homage to Avalokiteshvara. You see all phenomena neither come nor go, yet you work solely for the benefit of beings. Protector and Guru, Guru and Protector Chandra Sikh, to you I continually bow with body, speech and mind. And so here also the praise is done through on the base from the point of view of the wisdom or knowledge, which is referred by the first line, and then the quality of compassion is shown by the next line. And then the next verse is also a homage and the promise to compose this text. And verse number, which is numbered 1. Verse number 3. Verse number 4. Friends and relatives acquainted for long will separate. Possessions gained with exertion will be left behind. Consciousness, the guest, will leave the guest house of the body. To let go of this is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Verse number 5 says, when friendship with someone causes the 3 poisons to increase, degrades the activities of listening, reflecting, meditation. And then verse number 6 shows the reliance on Guru. And so up to the verse number 6, it shows the practices pertaining to the beings with small capacity. And then next verse number 7 shows how to actually create the conditions, what are the methods that leads one to happiness in the next life. Verse number 8. So the main practice of or precept of the taking refuge is to avoid the 10 non-virtuous actions and actually practice the 10 virtuous practices. I would like to explain here. In verse number 7, it says, themselves captive in the prison of samsara, whom can the worldly gods protect? So I wish to make some clarification here. In Tibet, whether it's in Tibet or Himalayan regions where Tibetan Buddhist tradition is followed, we even we tend to consider the worldly gods, the local deities and so forth to be really important. And there are even some places where they do sacrifice of animals to these mundane deities. So even though we may be saying take refuge and so forth, but actually we may not be Buddhists. Of course, the worldly gods can be sought for temporary benefits and help, but we cannot take refuge in them. And especially we must not make sacrifice of animals. So in the Himalayan regions, there are some people in very remote places where people say they are Buddhists, but then they do animal sacrifice. Perhaps it may be there in Tibet. You cannot say it's our custom, but you are Buddhist. As Buddhists, we are meant not to harm any sentient beings. And therefore, we have to be very careful with this practice of refuge. And in the main monasteries, big monasteries of Tibetan monasteries here in exile, of course, the common kitchen only serve vegetarian food. Of course, we cannot restrict everyone from taking meat. Even in the Vinaya, the monks and nuns are not prohibited to take meat. But then, as organizations, many of them in Tibet have now taken to vegetarianism, which is very good. And then on special occasions, people also, it's very good. I mean, it would be very bad if we have to kill many animals. But of course, it depends on the individual's health also. If you really need meat, of course you should. But in nomadic areas like in Tibet, they have their own practice. I have heard that people have taken to vegetarianism. People have actually sold their animals to butchers for very little money, where they lose where they lose money, and then people have seen how these. I have listened people to some people's stories when these animals of the nomads were taken to the butchery, their legs were all broken, and then they were put into cramped into trucks and so forth. And then when they are in the butchery, they also put the hook on their nail. The animals' tongues are nailed, and therefore they cannot eat or anything. And so it seems there are some nomadic areas where this has happened. And so the nomads have their own way of life, of course. Perhaps it's better to have compassionate persons to take life of some animals. Perhaps these are exceptional cases. So it's better to have compassionate people take life of sentient beings as way of for their living and so forth, rather than having others who are totally incompassionate, non-compassionate towards others, other animals. And so, on the one hand, if the nomads lose their animals, it also harms the environment that they live in. And they also lose money by selling it cheaply. So I also sometimes jokingly say, when I visit monasteries, in the center of the temple, we have the statue of a Buddha. And we say, oh, this is Buddha. And we don't feel any kind of shame or fear. But then, when we go into the part of the monastery which is called Gonkang, the protector house, then people even seem not to be able to breathe properly because they fear so much about these protector deities. So when we see the Buddha, we should feel ashamed of our own wrongdoings, and we should even fear. Of course, we have wrathful deities, which are have their own significance, their symbolism. It's not that these deities are not there meant to actually frighten us as such. I met a Japanese once here who had traveled to Tibet and on pilgrimage, and then he visited one temple, a dark temple, where he saw all these frightening deities, and he lost his sleep that night, he said. And then he said, Buddhism is rooted in compassion, and it's a non-violent religion. How come all these deities, all these frightening deities are there in the temples? He asked me. So if we are not careful, and in certain protector pujas, there is mention of offering the offering the heart of a black sheep to the protected deities, and this was actually done by some monastery in the past, but it was later on stopped. And then there is also people discriminating those who are considered to be of lower caste, and that they are not allowed to go into monasteries, which is there in Ladakh. And I also have heard that this also happens in Tibet, because people are considered to belong to lower caste. They are not admitted into monasteries to become students, or they are not allowed to visit the monastery temples. Buddha came to this world in India, where there was this casteism, and he was against this. He said, in my religion, the casteism is not important. Which lineage you belong to is not important. And he said, at the feet of Upali, even Upali who came from a caste of barbers, the lineage of a barber family, he said, the Buddha said that at the feet of Upali, even a king should bow. And so the Buddha did not make this discrimination between the different castes. Mao has told me once that the Buddha was a revolutionary because he was against casteism, which was prevalent in India at that time. So that was what. So at one time, Mao was said to have praised the Buddha. There was a time when he praised the Buddha, but at another time he even said to me that religion is poison, opium. So it seems there are people who consider casteism as something justified. This is not good, not right. We are all Buddhist practitioners. In all Buddhist countries where Buddhism has spread, we should not talk about casteism as such. Now, what I wanted to say here is, on the one hand, as Buddhists, we should not take refuge in the protector deities, the worldly protector deities. So what I wanted to say actually here is about the Gyabo Shugden. The controversy, of course, has been there for nearly 400 years. During this whole span of time, of nearly 400 years, he has always remained controversial and never uncontroversial. And then, during the time of the later part of the Pabongka Rinpoche's life, Pabongka Dechen Nyingpo, since then, this controversy has still remained for the last 70 years or so. During the 13th Dalai Lama's time, the practice of the Shugden could not be propagated much. But after his death, then there was this propagation of the propitiation of Shugden. Jabja Pabongka Rinpoche and Jabja Chijang Rinpoche were the masters of the lineage holders of Jagrasamvara tradition of Tantra. But because of the merit, the less merit of sentient beings and karma and so forth, but there has been this propagation of the Shugden practice. Since 1956 or something, 1951, I also started propitiating Shugden. I also considered him to be the greatest protector of the lineage of Lama Tsongkhapa. Of course, my master Ling Rinpoche, was very clear about it. Is clear of the practice of Shugden. But Chijang Rinpoche, of course, did practice on Shugden. But he considered Shugden as being a worldly, wrathful deity. And then I had some doubt about Shugden, and then did some tests and checked about this. And then in the lineage of the Dalai Lamas, there is this tradition of doing certain double test or divination when it comes to checking very important issues. But I don't want to go into details about this. And then I did this and finally decided to stop propitiating Shugden. And then in the beginning, of course, I didn't come out to restrict people. But then I stopped people from doing that. And amongst the Shugden practitioners, there has been people who actually caused lots of. There had been people who killed the director of the Institute of Dialectics, who was a simple monk with two of his disciples. They were actually engaged in some project of translating either the explanation of the Heart Sutra or the dependent origination. So the people who practiced Shugden actually stabbed these three monks of the Institute of Dialectics, and the police found 16 stabs in the body of the director, Gen Lobsang Gyatsola. And then, of course, the Shugden actually started, this controversy started during the time of the 5th Dalai Lama. And we went through, we found that the people sometimes have said that the 5th Dalai Lama himself has actually written a propitiatory kind of text for Shugden. But we searched for that and we didn't find. Instead, we found another text which was like in his biography, where the 5th Dalai Lama was said to have written a text as a witness to all the other protectors to not help Shugden. And we found that particular text in one of the secret visionary texts of the 5th Dalai Lama. So in his text, he says the Tugu Gelek Pelsang's reincarnation was actually recognized. But he says, so the Fifth Dalai Lama mentions the name of the six names of the six armed Mahakala down to set up the protector and ask all of them to not help this Shugden. So the Shugden is said to have come from a wrong kind of prayer, and then he was of the nature. He's of the nature of someone who is harmful to sentient beings and the Dharma. And the Fifth Dalai Lama himself was someone not just following some others just because somebody says something, but he was a great scholar and had great visions of the deities, and which also has studied all the classical texts. So he considers Shugden to be of this kind of nature. So unless we have someone who is of equal caliber and of in terms of realization, and such a person can actually challenge him, otherwise not. And so we found this particular text in this visionary teachings. And so after I checked about Shugden, then I found that by propitiating Shugden, it displeases the Nechung and Palden Hamo and Damjen Chögyal, the Dharma Raja, who is the Dharma protector, oath-bound Dharma protector, assigned to this job by Lama Tsongkhapa himself. And so it is my responsibility to explain the pros and cons of this particular practice of Shugden. So I have to explain to you what are the benefits and what are the demerits of propitiating Shugden. And so 13th Dalai Lama propitiated the Chapter Pabongka propitiated the 13th the Shugden very much, and because of that, the 13th Dalai Lama actually stopped him from doing that. And so the 13th Dalai Lama in the beginning and during the earlier part of earlier part of Pabongka's life, the 13th Dalai Lama was said to have been really good, pleased with him. But then later on, because of the propitiation of Shugden, he actually lost that favor from the 13th Dalai Lama. And also Purjo Ngawang Champas in his writings, he has written a catalogue of the three monasteries, Jepun, Garden and Sera. And in the Garden catalogue, he says there was no tradition of propitiating Shugden, the mundane deities in the past in Garden. But later on, there had been even Garden Tripas who have actually trusted their heart and soul to this kind of mundane deity. And then during the and then later on, during this time of the 7th Dalai Lama, Tijang Ngawang Chogden, in his biography, it is written that he actually cleared the garden of the practice of Shugden completely. There was one Gaden Tripa at that time who actually propitiated Shugden, and Tijin Ngawang Shogden stopped him from doing that, and all the structure that were built for Shugden were all destroyed, and they were taken outside the monastery premise. And so later on, that the mundane deity, which was referred in the biography of the Tijin Ngawang Shogden, was found to be Dögel or Shugden, as found in another biography. And in the recent years, Pabongka Rinpoche's contemporary, Kangsa Dorji Chang, in the central part of Tibet, they were the main masters. I was told by Debung throne holder Tenpa Tenzin La that Kangsa Dorji Chang was quite concerned about the Pabongka Rinpoche spreading the practice of the practice of Shugden, which is not auspicious. So Kangsa Dorji Chang had told this to one of the Tibetan officials, Tongyi Chemo. Kangsa Dorji Chang had actually told that it would not be good if Pabongka Rinpoche spread this practice of Shugden. So Kangsa Dorji Chang and Ling Rinpoche also had the doubt about this practice of the Shugden. So Ling Rinpoche had told me once, and then I confirmed about. I got confirmation from the Khensu Tenpa Tenzin, and I referred that to Ling Rinpoche, and he said that is true. And then, after having stopped the practice of Shugden myself, I related this to Jabjichan Rinpoche. I related to him all the processes that I went through by such as checking the pros and cons of propitiating Shugden. And Jabjichan Rinpoche was very pleased with me. He said, whatever you have done is right. You have done the right thing. Everything has been rather correct, the process. And so some people have said in certain documents that after the death of Tijang Dorji Chang, Tijang Rinpoche, my guru, I came out with about the restriction of Dögel. That is not true at all. And so if you are propitiating Shugden, you must not take initiations from me or take vows from me. Because it will be harmful to me as well as yourself. As Drukpa Kunle says, we would otherwise have lots of people who are fallen in terms of their vows to the Guru. And so in India, in the great monasteries, including the Gyuto and Gyume monasteries, and others, after I have done all the tests through and seen the reason and purpose, you have also seen the reason and purpose and stopped the propitiation of Shugden. But there are others who still continue to go against my advice, my request and advice, who are against their own vows and pledges in relation to me as well. But inside Tibet, there are people who are very good, full of integrity with regards to this issue. But in some place, In Amdo, for example, there is a place called Hamo City where people are said to have do propitiation of Shugden very much, and also in Chamdo and also Dagyap area of Kham and Markham and Denma areas of Kham. When Dema Gonsar was alive, he really strongly practiced it and spread it. And so there are still some who say that the restriction of the His Holiness banning the practice of Shugden is something not definitive, but also but just interpretive, provisional. And some say that because the Dalai Lama is practicing the Nyingma tradition, that's why he is putting on this ban. He's banning the propitiation of Shugden. But that is not true at all. And some say even that the Dalai Lama is no more Geluk but Nyingma. So this is not really true. So we have that great text written, 18 volumes of the writings of Lama Tsongkhapa. So if we were to just justify ourselves as being Gelukpas because of the mere propitiation of the Shugden or Thörgel, then that's not right. We are disregarding the 18 volumes of the text written by Master Tsongkhapa. And we have the texts written by the great masters of Nalanda, like Nagarjuna and so forth. We do not refer to the greatness of these masters and Nalanda because of some protected deity like Gombur Charokdong or the crow-faced Mahakala or some other protector, but because of these great masters and their writings. And so if we were to disregard the writings of Lama Tsongkhapa and just consider the propitiation of Shugden as being more important, then that's wrong. Either you have to choose me, or the 14th Dalai Lama, or the mundane deity, the wrathful mundane deity. So I have said it very clearly, I hope. So everybody should have heard me clearly. And it seems in Chinese communities, it seems there are people who spread this practice in Taiwan, China, Singapore, in America and England and other European countries. There are people who spread this. Of course, it's up to you as individuals whether you want to appreciate worship Shugden or not. If you do decide to worship Shugden, then you should not come to me. Then about the next life, you should request Thörgel and not me. So please beware of this. With regard to the ban on Shugden, some people have said that this is not really what His Holiness had said, but others have made it up. Then people have even said that if it's not the real, if it's really what His Holiness has said, then we will actually think about it. Otherwise not. So people have come from Tibet and also from the whole Spiti, Ladakh, and so forth, and then the Chinese friends from Hong Kong, Singapore, and so forth. Please be aware of this. So stanza number 9 shows that of the pervasive conditioning suffering of samsara. So whatever pleasant experiences there are in the samsara, you should not be preoccupied with them, but you have to, it says that you have to strive for liberation. So how you try to achieve liberation is by practicing the three trainings, higher trainings of morality, concentration, and wisdom. And so if you look at the Buddha of the life of the Buddha himself left the royal life and cut his hair and became a monk. And so that's about the practice of higher morality, higher training of morality. And then the Buddha's 6-year austerity practice represents that of the practice of higher concentration, the training of higher training of concentration. And then also the practice of absorption in the selflessness is represents that of the higher training of wisdom. And so, through that practice of the higher concentration and wisdom, he is so said to have overcome, popularly called assuming as a ordinary person going through this path, the development, the progression of the path, and become enlightened under the Bodhi tree. So, for us also, if we seek liberation, then we have to keep the morality. It could be a lay person's vows or monastic vows. And on top of that, we have to develop the concentration, the single-pointed concentration, and add to it that of wisdom, the wisdom realizing selflessness. And then, in terms of the Mahayana, or the perfection vehicle, these three practices of the three trainings are the same. And then you have the morality within the 6 perfections, and also the concentration and wisdom in the 6 perfections. And this is true also with regard to Tantra. So you have to have either a monastic vow or a layperson's vow. And then on top of that, you add bodhisattva vows and then tantric vows. And then on top of that, you add the generation stage practice. The deity yoga practice is done through that. And then you have to do a sustained practice of the bliss and emptiness in Tantra. And so all three in all kinds of practices within Tantra, within Buddhism, you have to do them through based on these three, the morality. And there are people who say they are practitioners and this and that, but then they are not able to keep morality well, and they have sex and with women and have wife and then drink alcohol and so forth. Their behavior is all weird, and then still they claim to be true practitioners of Tantra and so forth. Even in the time of the Chisong Detsen, the king in the 8th century, Guru Padmasambhava and Chandarakshita were there. They established the monastic tradition as well as a lay practitioners tradition. We have the lay practitioners with white robes and monastics in red robes. Perhaps this had not been there in India in the past. We have these two separate groups of practitioners, Kalachakra and Rabjung Murmik, the saffron-robed monastics and the white-robed tantric practitioners with hair. And so, if you are practitioners of Tantra, Tantric practitioners, then you should do your practice like Sakya Tizin Rinpoche. Otherwise, you dress like a monk and you still are like, in reality, you're not a monk, and actually what you would actually fall into is the tantric practitioners, and it's not really good. It really harms the dharma as well. And then with regard to drinking alcohol in Tibet, people, I have heard that people take to drinking beer and whiskey and so forth, which are really bad for your health. the traditional Tibetan Chang is said to have some good effect on the body. For example, it helps one to overcome lung problem. And so whiskey and beer, living aside Chang and drinking this. So I have a friend who became sick because of alcoholism, and he came to see me in a very weak health. So I told him, your weakness and your sickness was a disease is actually caused by yourself. It's your own doing. And then I also heard that in Tibet people gamble a lot. I have a joke for the Ladakhis. I tease them. When I was touring around Ladakh one time, I asked somebody if there were mahjong players, of people who play mahjong. And this person, the Ladakhi, said, we didn't used to play mahjong before, but some Tibetans taught some Ladakhis how to play mahjong, and now we have people, Ladakhis, who do that, who play mahjong. And so Tibetans have been a good teacher for them, it seems. And so you should not. In China, Macau is very popular for gambling. So we have to be very careful with gambling. So today I'll stop here. So we'll do the bodhicitta tomorrow. Generation of bodhicitta tomorrow. Tomorrow morning. Initially, the plan was to do it at the great stupa, Mahabodhi stupa, but because of so many people, at 7 o'clock, we will have the offering, puja offering at the great stupa. So, as many, from amongst the lay people, the general public, as many people as possible should come there. And then I will come here and participate in the preliminary practices for the Kalachakra, mandala, and initiation. And then in the afternoon we'll have the teaching. Teaching. In the afternoon. Dresan Dengdrin Yodo Chawar Sun Samuel Dendri. Chosum Denda Dendri, Lende Lome Dendu Dajak, Dembe, Melam Gang Man, Yodro, Shaw, Gave Dembala, Kuver, Nacho, Sujan Sume, some during Embe Juboma, Chosum Dembe, Zene Juguruchi.